One day you will realize that what once brought you to your knees was not the pain itself, but the way you looked at yourself in that moment. And when you realize this, your entire life changes direction. If you have ever reacted too quickly, ever been pulled away by your emotions, ever felt weak in the very moments you needed strength the most, then this journey will awaken something you thought you had lost. Not the strength you must force yourself to have, but the strength that has been sleeping inside you for a very long time. Stay with me, because just a few minutes from now you will see the reason your life keeps repeating the same emotional loops. And more importantly, you will see the path into the strongest, most peaceful, and most lucid version of yourself. This is not a story to listen to, but a mirror for you to see your own soul. Let us begin. The invisible cost of reacting is always present in even the smallest moments of modern life, and I am guiding you into the territory that most people never dare to look at directly. Each day you wake up with the intention of living more peacefully, but just one cold glance from someone or an unrefined comment is enough to pull your entire inner strength off balance. You think you are strong, yet a single unintentional action from another person can disrupt your emotions as if you were suddenly swept into a storm. What exhausts you is not the event itself, but the speed at which the brain turns tiny signals into a threatening story that something is wrong with you. When someone does not reply to your message, you immediately feel unimportant. When a coworker points out a mistake, you assume they are belittling you. These reactions silently drain your energy and pull you away from the powerful essence you naturally possess. I see how many people spend their entire day simply putting out emotional fires. A stressful meeting can unsettle them for the whole afternoon. A small argument with a loved one carries irritation into their sleep. The truth is, most people do not live in their real life, but in the aftershocks of unresolved emotional reactions. When you let your emotions be led by every movement outside of you, you give others the authority over your life, and they do not even know they hold that power. Within you exists a version far more grounded, but that version is obscured by layers of dense reactions. I am guiding you into the place where the rawest truth is revealed. You are not as weak as you think, and you are not failing at self-control. You are simply operating through old neural pathways where the brain has learned to react instead of respond. When you live in an environment that constantly activates stress, the brain begins to default to seeing every signal as a potential threat. That is why you become more sensitive, more easily hurt, and always on guard. The invisible cost is that you lose the clarity and peace that originally belonged to you. When reacting becomes a habit, you lose the ability to step outside the emotional waves to see the real essence of the problem. And only when you see that can you begin reclaiming the authority over your life. The first key is recognizing that your reactions do not reflect your strength, but reflect how much you are being led by the external world. And from the moment you become aware of this, the journey of true emotional mastery begins. The emotional loop in life is not formed from weakness, but from a brain programmed for survival. And I am guiding you into the deeper layer, where emotional reactions begin to operate like a machine no one notices. The human brain was not born for peace, but for detecting danger as quickly as possible. Thousands of years ago, our ancestors had to react in every moment to avoid predators, evade hidden traps, and survive long winters. Even though the world has changed, the brain still keeps that mechanism and turns every small signal into a warning. When someone looks at you with an irritated expression, the brain assumes it is a threat. When you hear a mild criticism, the brain interprets it as danger to your self-worth. When your partner sighs, the brain immediately imagines you are about to be abandoned. In the fraction of a second before you can think, the amygdala has already activated the nervous system and the body is placed into an alarm state. Your heartbeat speeds up, your breath becomes shallow, your shoulders tighten, your jaw locks, and the mind begins to run toward the darkest possible stories. The striking point is that all of this happens before reason appears. The part of the brain responsible for analysis arrives later. so you always feel that you react too quickly and cannot understand why. The emotional loop starts here. A small signal activates a deep fear. That fear then pushes you into a reaction, and the reaction reinforces the belief that the world is unsafe. And so the circle closes. The more you react, the more you reinforce the neural pathways that teach the brain those situations are always dangerous. And when every signal is interpreted as a threat, you live in a state of mild but constant tension all day without knowing it. The nervous system is continuously activated, making you more sensitive, quicker to anger, easier to feel sad, and more easily hurt. Each time you are wounded, you not only feel the pain of that moment, but also reopen old memories. The brain does not distinguish between present and memory. When you recall a time you were criticized as a child, the brain reacts as if it is happening right now. Therefore, most emotional eruptions are not reactions to the present, but reactions to layers of unhealed memories. From there, the core wound is formed. Everyone has their deepest fear. Some fear abandonment, so they react intensely whenever someone leaves, even if it is just a normal action. Some fear not being good enough, so even a small piece of feedback makes them defensive. Some fear losing control, so they try to control everything, and when they cannot, they explode. The brain protects the core wound by creating strong reactions to avoid further injury. But those reactions only cause them to repeat the same old pain again and again. When you do not look directly at this mechanism, you will believe your emotions are your true nature. But in reality, they are only an old survival program operating on top of unprocessed memories. You think you are worrying about the present, but the brain is recalling the pain of the past. You think you are angry because of a single comment, but the emotion is actually an echo from years ago. The emotional loop is a combination of three elements. First, the brain constantly scans for danger and overreacts to harmless signals. Second, unhealed painful memories amplify emotions. Third, lack of awareness keeps you from realizing you are acting out of habit, not from your true self. When these three elements merge, the brain continuously pushes you into reactive states and you lose the power of choice. You do not choose anger. You do not choose sadness. You do not choose worry. The reaction appears before you can decide. And the more you react, the more you reinforce the neural pathways that make the next reaction even easier. That is why many people say, "I did nothing yet." The emotion already surged. That is why you feel you always have to apologize after an outburst, but then repeat it again next time. And that is also why many people underestimate themselves, believing they lack self-control. But when you look at the essence, you will see another truth. You are not the problem. The survival-based brain mechanism is the problem. That mechanism once helped humans survive, but today it turns your emotional world into a battlefield. And once you understand this mechanism, the loop can be broken. Not through force, not through suppression, but through awareness. By simply recognizing that the reaction is not you but just an old program, the brain begins to change. And from that first moment of awareness, you enter the journey of reclaiming the emotional mastery you have unconsciously lost for many years. The core wounds that shape the way humans perceive the world do not appear in the present moment, but are formed in the early years of life, when the mind is still tender and absorbs every experience as absolute truth. And I am guiding you into the deeper layer, where your present emotions are connected to memories you thought had left you long ago. Each person carries within them a layer of memories imprinted into the nervous system like invisible carvings, and these are what create the lens through which you see the world. When someone is silent, you do not only see the present silence, but also the feeling of once being abandoned. When someone criticizes you, you do not only hear the feedback, but also the echoes of old reproach. When someone fails to appreciate your effort, you do not only feel disappointed, but relive the feeling of never being good enough. These core wounds are formed from experiences that seem small but leave deep emotional marks. One moment of being yelled at made you believe you are always wrong. One comparison made you believe you are always inferior. One moment of being ignored made you believe you are not worthy of love. When these beliefs repeat often enough, the brain accepts them as truth and builds the entire reaction system based on them. What makes them so powerful is not the original event, but the meaning you attach to it. Children do not analyze. They absorb everything as absolute truth. If adults are angry, the child believes they are the cause. If adults walk away, the child believes they are unworthy. If adults do not listen, the child believes their voice has no value. And when these beliefs are carried into adulthood, they become the root of every emotional reaction. You do not fear present criticism. You fear re-experiencing the moment when you had no protection. You do not fear today's silence. You fear the loneliness you once felt when you needed someone and they were not there. You do not fear current conflicts. You fear the pain of rejection that once forced you to survive alone in the dark. These wounds operate quietly like background programs, and you cannot see them directly. You can only see their effects in behavior. A person who fears abandonment always worries when someone creates distance. A person who fears not being enough always overextends themselves to gain approval. A person who fears losing control always reacts strongly to small changes. The issue is not the situation, but the invisible expectation formed from the past. When an older person says it is just a joke, you still get triggered because the brain does not distinguish between a joke and an emotional threat. When your partner gets upset and you stay silent to avoid making things worse, your inner world still churns because the core wound has been activated. When a colleague gives feedback, you pretend to be fine, but in your mind, you have already written a story that you are not competent enough. The core wound distorts the way you interpret reality, making harmless things feel heavy and small matters turn into storms. When the core wound has not been acknowledged, you believe the world is hurting you, but in truth, it is your memories doing it. Each time someone behaves coldly, the memory of abandonment resurfaces. Each time you are criticized, the memory of shame ignites. Each time someone is disappointed in you, the memory of not being enough returns. The brain reacts to memory as strongly as it reacts to reality, because emotions are not stored in the rational mind but in the nervous system and the body. When emotions surge intensely, it is not because the present is too painful, but because the past has not been healed. This awareness is a turning point because it shows you that the problem does not lie in your present self, but in the part of you that has been forgotten. If you do not look directly at the core wound, you will continue reacting unconsciously and repeat old patterns. You will choose the wrong people because you are searching for the familiar version of those who once hurt you. You will overwork yourself to be loved because you believe you are not enough. You will withdraw when facing conflict because you believe you are unimportant. You are constantly torn between two forces. One pulls you back into the old identity that is fearful, defensive, and reactive. The other pulls you toward your true essence, where you are peaceful, clear, and strong. But for the second force to operate, you must confront the root. The core wound is not for blaming, but for understanding. When you understand, you dismantle the reactive loop. When you realize that your present emotion is an echo of the past, you are no longer ruled by it. When you allow yourself to revisit the wound without judgment, the brain begins to rewrite its meaning. The truth is that in each moment, you are not reacting to others, but to the shadow of memory. But with awareness, you begin to respond based on who you choose to become. The journey of transformation begins here, not by changing others, not by avoiding conflict, not by suppressing emotions, but by looking into the place where emotion is truly born. Because when you can face the core wound, you no longer see the world through the lens of fear, but through the eyes of someone who has returned to themselves. The 4-level map of emotional mastery is not a theoretical system but a mirror reflecting each person's inner journey of growth, and I am guiding you into this map so you can clearly see where you truly stand in the process of transformation. The first level is where humans operate entirely through unconscious reactions. At this stage, emotions erupt before you even realize what is happening. You hear an unpleasant comment and instantly feel attacked. You see someone's disappointment and immediately assume you are wrong. You interpret another person's gaze as a direct threat to your self-worth. There is no space between stimulus and reaction. The brain pulls you into an emotional vortex so quickly that you have no time to choose. Life at this level feels like being swept away by a rapid current. You may be intelligent or kind, but when the reaction rises, you behave as if you no longer have control. And the frightening part is that you believe you are that emotion. You think you are irritable, weak, or insecure, but in truth, this is simply a stage where awareness has not yet opened. The second level is where you begin to notice your reaction as it is happening. You still get angry, sad, or panicked, but a small part of you whispers that you are reacting. Although this part may be faint, it signals that you are stepping into a new layer of awareness. At this level, many people feel worse because they cannot control their reaction, yet they also know they are losing control. But this is actually the most crucial stage of awakening. You start to see that the reaction is not your true self, but an old program running in the background. You begin creating the first gap between your being and your emotion. This gap is the foundation of inner freedom. The third level is when you can pause before the reaction explodes. You sense the triggering signal approaching like a wave, but you do not let it sweep you away. You pause, breathe, observe, and choose a deliberate response. At this level, you become the driver rather than the passenger. Situations that once made you explode now become training grounds where you prove to yourself that you are stronger than the old patterns. You begin to recognize that emotions are not enemies, but messages. Anger tells you a boundary has been crossed. Sadness tells you something needs healing. Anxiety tells you you are stepping into instability. When you understand their meaning, you no longer fear emotions but use them as a compass. The fourth level is the highest stage where you transform emotions into creative energy and inner power. This is not a state of having no emotions, but a state where emotions cannot overthrow you. You feel more deeply, yet remain more calm. You respond more slowly, yet more precisely. You do not avoid the truth. You face it with full presence. At this level, you become someone others feel safe around. Because your energy is steady like an anchor. You hold your center even when everything around you are chaotic. Others may lose their composure, but you are not affected. They may try emotional manipulation, but you are not pulled in. They may exert pressure, but you respond with clarity. This is the stage of full self-mastery. And to reach it, you do not skip steps. You move through each layer. The layer of unconscious reaction where you believe you are your fear. The layer of awareness where you see yourself being pulled. The layer of conscious choice where you pause and decide. And the layer of mastery where you use emotion as strength. When you look at this map, you will notice something important. No level states that you are weak or inadequate. Each level only shows where you stand on the journey. If you often explode, that is not your nature but a sign you are at level 1. If you notice yourself reacting, that means you have already stepped into level 2. If you sometimes stay calm and sometimes do not, that means you are in level 3. If you feel life can no longer easily break you, that means you are entering level 4. This map gives you clarity. You no longer ask why you are like this. You simply ask where you are and what the next step is. And when you accept your current stage without judgment, you open the path forward, because no one can become their strongest version unless they dare to look directly at where they are standing. When you know which level you belong to, you not only understand who you are but also know what you are moving toward. This map is not just theory, but a compass guiding you toward the inner peace you thought you never had. Because the truth is, you have always had it. Only when you step onto the journey of emotional mastery do you finally see that part of yourself clearly. The moment of pausing and the art of observing yourself is the boundary that separates a person who is swept away by reactions from a person who begins the journey of inner mastery. And I am guiding you into the place where a single small moment can change the entire trajectory of your emotional life. Every strong reaction inside you has a point of origin, and that point always occurs faster than the speed of your thinking. You hear a comment that touches your pride, and before you understand what is happening, you already feel your heart tighten. You see someone's disappointed expression, and before the mind can analyze, you have already told yourself the story that you are not good enough. This happens because the brain reacts first and awareness arrives later. But what very few people know is that between the moment of activation and the moment of reaction, there is always a small gap, a pause so brief that most people miss it their entire lives. If you see it, you can redirect your emotions. If you miss it, the emotions will pull you with their momentum. The pause is the first freedom you ever have in your inner world, and it is the doorway to all higher levels of mastery. When you pause, you do not force yourself to be calm, nor do you try to appear strong. You simply look at what is happening inside without judgment. You see your chest tightening, you see your breath speeding up, you see your mind racing faster than usual. You feel heat rising within your body, and you observe all of it as if none of it is you but simply signals appearing. When you can do this, you step out of the role of the one who is reacting and become the one who is observing. This shift in roles changes the entire emotional structure. The nervous system is informed that there is no real threat, and the intensity of emotion begins to decrease. The brain stops scanning for danger and shifts into conscious processing. In that moment, you regain the power of choice. One person may yell out of reflex, but a person who knows how to pause will breathe deeply and view the situation with clarity. One person may get swept up in anger and hurt others, but someone who can pause recognizes that what they are feeling is not the truth of the present moment, but the footprint of an old memory. One person may panic at silence, but the one who pauses sees that it is only interpretation, not reality. The art of pausing is not the skill of suppression, but the skill of awareness. And awareness is always stronger than control. Control only compresses, awareness redirects. When you pause, you create enough space to see what is truly operating underneath. You see fear instead of anger. You see insecurity instead of sadness. You see the wound instead of the person in front of you. And when you see the essence, you no longer react to the surface, but respond to the truth. The pause is also where you begin breaking the emotional loop. The loop continues only when your reaction plays out unconsciously. But when you pause, you insert a new factor into the loop. You are no longer reacting through old neural pathways, but beginning to create new ones. Each time you pause, you strengthen your stability and weaken the old momentum. One day you pause once. 1 week, you pause 5 times. 1 month, you pause 20 times. And eventually, you realize that your emotions no longer erupt with the same force, not because you changed the circumstances, but because you changed the way you show up in the moment. The art of observing yourself is the deeper step after pausing. If pausing is the doorway, observing is the room within it. Observation means looking at your body, mind, and emotions with objectivity. When you observe, you do not say "I am angry," but say "there is anger arising." You do not say "I am afraid," but say "fear is moving in the body." It may sound small, but this shift in language changes the entire emotional experience. You separate your being from the emotion. You are no longer the anger, but the observer of anger. You are no longer the sadness, but the witness of sadness. When you observe without resistance, the emotion loses its force. Emotions are strong only when you fuse with them. When you do not fuse, they pass like waves. And from the moment an emotion passes without you fighting it, you begin to see that you are stronger than you ever believed. The art of observing yourself turns you into the narrator of the story instead of the character being pulled along. You no longer say they hurt me, but say there is hurt arising because of what they said. You no longer say I cannot handle this, but say there is tension arising. You no longer say I am losing control, but say there is a reaction trying to pull me. When you change the way you see, you change the way you live. The moment of pausing also opens the ability to connect deeply with others. When you do not react, you listen. When you do not judge, you understand. When you are not swept into emotion, you can see the other person's pain in their own way. This not only saves tense conversations, but also soothes relationships on the verge of breaking. Most conflicts do not come from events, but from unadjusted reactions. When one person pauses, the other feels safe. And when both pause, the relationship heals. The moment of pausing is the foundation of the entire emotional mastery journey. If you cannot pause, you cannot observe. If you cannot observe, you cannot choose. If you cannot choose, you cannot change. And if you cannot change, you will live your entire life repeating old wounds in new situations. But if you pause even once, you begin the journey of moving yourself out of the reactive zone and into the zone of inner freedom, where you can stand firm before any wave life throws at you. Just one moment of pausing can help you meet again the strong version of yourself you thought you had lost. Reframing perception and transforming the story that is hurting you is the turning point where you no longer see the world through the old lens, and I am guiding you into the deep place where every strong emotion originates from a story you tell yourself. When an event happens, you do not react to the event itself, but to the meaning you attach to it. Someone is silent, and you interpret it as they no longer value you. Someone is busy and replies late, and you interpret it as being abandoned. Someone gives you feedback, and you interpret it as not being good enough. Every emotion comes after the story, and the story determines the intensity of the emotion. When the story is distorted, the emotion will explode, and when the emotion explodes, you believe you are seeing the truth. But in most cases, you are only seeing a distorted version of the truth. Reframing means stepping out of the old story to view what is happening with objective eyes. This is not an exercise in making everything positive or forcing yourself to think beautifully to avoid the truth, but seeing the truth without adding assumptions rooted in old wounds. When you reframe, you do not deny the emotion but redefine the context so the emotion is placed in the correct position. When someone does not respond, you do not assume you are being abandoned. You see the possibility that they are busy or they need time. When someone frowns, you do not assume they are judging you. You see the possibility that they are stressed about something of their own. When someone raises their voice, you do not assume they are belittling you. You see the possibility that they are defending themselves because of their own fear. Reframing does not change the event but changes the perspective. And when perspective changes, the entire emotional reaction changes. This does not happen through force but through awareness. When you reframe, you see 3 layers of reality. The first layer is the event, short, objective, without added color. For example, they did not reply to the message. The second layer is the story you create. For example, they do not value you. The third layer is the emotion born from the story. For example, you feel abandoned or unimportant. When these 3 layers merge into one, you think they are all a single truth. But when you separate them, you begin to see the truth that the event is very small while the story is very big. And it is the story that hurts you, not the event. When you realize this, you begin to reclaim the power to write the story yourself instead of allowing memory to write it for you. Reframing is not about changing the story into a more pleasant version, but expanding the range of interpretation so you are not trapped in the darkest version. The brain tends to choose the worst scenario because it is wired for survival. It always thinks negatively to prepare for the worst case. But emotional life is not a survival battle. You no longer live in the forest. You live among people. and most emotional signals are not danger. When you give the brain more interpretations, you break the power of the old story. For example, when someone criticizes you, instead of thinking "I failed," you reframe it as "this is information for me to grow." When someone leaves, instead of thinking "I am not worthy of love," you reframe it as "this person is not aligned with my journey." When someone does not understand you, instead of thinking "I have no value," you reframe it as they are seeing from their own lens. When meaning changes, belief changes. When belief changes, emotion changes. When emotion changes, behavior changes. And when behavior changes, life changes. All sustainable transformation begins at the level of meaning. People who react strongly do not do so because they are too sensitive, but because they cannot see that the story inside them is not the truth. Someone says a careless comment, but the story inside you turns it into a personal attack. Someone forgets what you said, but the story inside you turns it into "you are not important." Someone does not meet your expectations, but the story inside you turns it into "you are not good enough." Reframing is how you stop this process at the beginning. When you reframe, you stand before the emotion, but do not let the emotion define the nature of the situation. You stand before fear, but do not let fear write the story. You stand before others, but do not let them determine your worth. And most importantly, you stand before yourself, but do not let old memories drag you back into the version you used to be. The art of reframing also helps you see the hidden motives behind others' behavior. Someone speaking loudly is not strong but defending themselves. Someone being silent does not mean they do not care, but they do not know how to express themselves. Someone criticizing you does not mean they hate you, but that they lack emotional expression. When you see this, you pause before judging. You see that the other person is also being driven by their wounds. This does not weaken you. It strengthens you because you no longer personalize everything. Reframing is also not forgiving harmful behavior, but clearly distinguishing which part is your responsibility and which part is not. This helps you maintain boundaries without putting yourself into unnecessary hurt. When you reframe, you become someone who can stand between two opposing emotional currents without being pulled into either side. You see the truth but are not broken by it. You see the pain but are not swallowed by it. You see others' weaknesses but do not let them make you insecure. And in that calmness, you begin building a life not based on reaction but on awareness. Reframing is the step that moves you from being a victim of the old story to the author of a new one. And when you have the power to rewrite the story, you have the power to rewrite the future. Every time you reframe is a moment you move away from the old identity and move closer to the strong essence you were born to become. Emotional alchemy and transforming turbulent energy into inner strength is a step very few people ever reach, because most only try to escape their emotions instead of using them. And I am guiding you into the deep layer where emotions are no longer enemies but become the force that helps you grow. Every strong emotion that appears within you carries a large amount of energy. When angry, you feel heat rise. When anxious, you feel your heart race. When sad, you feel your body sink. When ashamed, you feel your chest tighten. That energy does not disappear on its own. If you suppress it, it becomes stagnant and returns in the form of tension, fatigue, or sudden outbursts. But if you know how to perform emotional alchemy, you transform that energy into power that opens a new level of maturity. Emotional alchemy is not avoiding the emotion but going straight into its center. You allow yourself to feel it fully without letting it control your actions. You feel the heat of anger but do not speak hurtful words. You feel the quickened heartbeat of anxiety but do not let it make you retreat. You feel sadness rise, but do not let it drag you down. When you can do this, you stop the old reaction cycle and turn emotion into raw material for building inner strength. Anger is the energy of boundaries. If you let it explode, it destroys relationships. But if you hold it long enough to understand it, you use it to speak truth powerfully without harming others. Fear is the energy of warning. If you let it take over, you shrink. But if you observe it, you learn what is important to protect. Sadness is the energy of connection. If you drown in it, you become hopeless. But if you open to it, you understand what needs healing. Frustration is the energy of change. If you let it control you, you become irritable. But if you use it, you change the system that creates your dissatisfaction. Emotional alchemy is the ability to stand in the middle of strong energy while remaining centered. When you stand in anger yet stay clear, you cultivate boundaries. When you stand in fear yet remain calm, you cultivate stability. When you stand in sadness yet stay open, you cultivate depth. When you stand in disappointment yet continue moving, you cultivate perseverance. Every strong quality you admire in others is born from moments when they practiced emotional alchemy instead of running from their emotions. Emotion is fire. Fire can burn you, but it can also forge you into steel. Fire is neither good nor bad, it is simply powerful. And the one who knows how to use fire builds a solid life from the very things that once frightened them. To practice emotional alchemy, you must understand the law of inner energy. Emotion always follows a three-step cycle. It rises, it peaks, it dissolves. The problem is that most people never reach the third step because they interfere and try to extinguish the emotion while it is mid-cycle. When you try to suppress an emotion, it does not disappear but becomes locked in the body. When locked, it becomes internal pressure and will find a way out at your weakest moment. When you allow the emotion to complete its cycle, it dissolves like a wave returning to shore and leaves you lighter. Emotional alchemy is allowing the emotion to complete its cycle in a safe, internal environment. You do not act on the emotion. You do not judge the emotion. You simply feel it like feeling heat from a flame. When you stay with the emotion long enough without resisting or performing it, something strange happens. The heat decreases, the heartbeat slows, the body relaxes, the mind opens, and the emotion leaves behind a new kind of energy, the energy of maturity. This is why people who have gone through deep pain without letting it break them often become strong, composed, and profound. They are not strong because they never suffered. They are strong because they learned to stay with the pain until it turned into wisdom. Emotional alchemy also opens the door to connecting with your deeper essence. When you no longer run from emotions, you begin hearing your truest voice. You begin understanding what truly matters. You begin seeing clearly what must be released. You begin knowing who you are beyond reactions and memories. Emotional alchemy is not theory, but practice. When anger rises, you place a hand on your chest and feel the heat without jumping into argument. When anxiety rises, you breathe deeply to stabilize the body before the mind is pulled away. When sadness surges, you allow tears if needed, but do not let it defeat you. When disappointment flares, you let it show what is not aligned instead of turning against yourself. Each such moment creates a small shift that, when accumulated, becomes great power. Emotional alchemy transforms you from someone who is pulled around into someone who steers, from someone who reacts into someone who acts with intention, from someone who fears emotion into someone who uses emotion to understand themselves and life. And when you master this ability, you enter a level of development most people never reach. You no longer fight emotions but move with them. You are no longer destabilized by turbulence but use it as fuel to become deeper, clearer, and stronger. Emotional alchemy is the art of turning chaos into order, turning wounds into maturity, and turning turbulence into the resource for building a new identity. When you master the fire within, no wind from outside can bring you down. Rebuilding the baseline of inner peace so the nervous system no longer signals danger is the foundation that determines whether you can truly step out of the emotional loop. And I am guiding you into the deeper layer of the body where peace does not come from positive thinking but from a stable biological state. All of your emotional reactions do not arise only from the story in your mind, but also from the level of underlying tension stored in the body. When the body is constantly in a mild alarm state, you react more strongly to every small signal. When the body is placed in a state of safety, you see everything with clearer eyes. Your nervous system is like the ground. If the ground shakes, you cannot build anything stable. If the ground is steady, you can raise any structure. The baseline of inner peace is the ground of your inner life. And most people do not realize they are living on ground that constantly trembles, even though no real danger is present. They sleep poorly, eat in a rush, work under pressure, live under continuous stress, and spend the entire day putting out emotional fires. This traps the nervous system in a permanently activated state. When the nervous system is activated, every small thing becomes a big problem. A single look makes you tense. A comment breaks your heart. A small change throws you off balance. But when the nervous system is stable, all signals around you become lighter. You no longer exaggerate situations. You no longer interpret negatively. You no longer get pushed into constant reaction. To rebuild the baseline of peace, you must work with the body before working with the mind. The body always reacts before the mind. If the body feels safe, the mind will be stable. If the body is tense, the mind will be unsettled. Therefore, this journey begins with elements that seem simple but deeply influence the entire nervous system. The first element is the breath. When you breathe short, the body believes you are in danger. When you breathe deep and slow, the body understands you are safe. One long exhale can calm the nervous system faster than any motivational advice. When you feel triggered, take a long breath to signal to the body that there is no real threat. This is the fastest way to bring yourself back to the present moment. The second element is your pace of life. When you do too much in a day, the body has no time to return to baseline. Tension becomes the default. People who believe they handle stress well are often just accustomed to chronic stress. When you do not have moments of true rest, the nervous system never resets. To rebuild the baseline of peace, you need small pockets of quiet spread throughout your day. Not long breaks, but an on and off rhythm so the nervous system does not get stuck in alarm mode. Just 1 or 2 minutes of returning to your breath can create a large shift if done consistently. The third element is sleep. The body does not recover when you think, but when you sleep. When you lack sleep, the part of the brain that regulates emotion weakens, and the part that creates reactivity becomes stronger. This turns every small signal into a trigger. No one can master emotions if sleep is compromised. Sleep is the foundation of peace. Quality sleep creates a stable nervous system, and a stable nervous system creates powerful inner strength. The fourth element is the environment. The body responds to the environment faster than you realize. A cluttered room stresses you without your awareness. A negative conversation drains you more than you think. A noisy space makes you more prone to outbursts. The outer environment becomes the inner environment. When you choose the right environment, you reduce pressure on the nervous system and create conditions for the body to return to balance. The fifth element is boundaries. When you do not have clear boundaries, you live in constant stress, and the nervous system treats that stress as normal. You say yes to too many things, hold too many of others' emotions, and allow people to intrude on your rest. This keeps the nervous system in defensive mode. But when you set boundaries, the nervous system understands that you are protecting your inner safety. Boundaries are not walls, but signals to the body that you are protected. The sixth element is restoration. Every day you spend energy, and if you do not restore it, the body accumulates tension. Restoration is not only rest, but nourishment. It may be a walk in fresh air, writing a few lines to yourself, sitting in silence, or talking to someone who brings you peace. Regular restoration brings the body back to balance, and when the body is balanced, the mind becomes clear. When you rebuild the baseline of inner peace, you no longer have to use willpower to stay calm. You are calm naturally because the nervous system is stable. You no longer react explosively because the body is no longer living in alarm. You are no longer easily hurt because the body's tension has decreased. Peace is no longer something you try to achieve, but something that appears naturally when the body is placed in its correct state. A stable nervous system turns you into someone difficult to shake. Others may lose control, but you do not get pulled in. Situations may be tense, but you do not lose your center. Life may challenge you, but you do not break. Rebuilding the baseline of peace is the foundation of a new identity. You cannot build inner depth on ground that always shakes. But when the ground stabilizes, you can move into higher levels of emotional mastery. This is when you no longer live to cope, but live to lead yourself. And when your nervous system becomes solid ground, you step into life with a stability no one can take from you. The ability to stand firm under pressure and use tension as a catalyst does not come from trying to be strong, but from the capacity to remain in high intensity without losing your center. And I am guiding you into the place where pressure is no longer an enemy, but becomes a training field that leads you into a sharper version of yourself. Pressure does not weaken people. Pressure only reveals the true level of stability inside them. When the nervous system has not been trained, you face a stressful situation, and the entire body immediately switches into alarm mode. Heart rate increases, breath shortens, shoulders tighten, the mind races as if searching for an escape. Just one raised voice or one unexpected situation is enough to pull you out of inner peace. But what matters is not how much pressure there is, but how strong your automatic reaction is inside. Pressure is only a mirror. It reflects the parts of you that you have not yet mastered. A criticism reflects the fear of not being enough. An unexpected change reflects the fear of losing control. A conflict reflects the fear of being abandoned. When you think you hate pressure, you are actually hating the sensation it triggers inside. To stand firm, you must learn to look directly at that sensation instead of letting it control you. Pressure does not disappear, but the way you stand within it can change. When you enter pressure with awareness, you begin to notice something others do not see. Pressure is not a personal attack, but a strong stream of energy moving through the body. When you pause before that energy and do not react out of habit, you begin restructuring yourself from within. At that moment, you are no longer being swept away by pressure, but using pressure to strengthen your foundation. Resilience does not come from avoiding high intensity, but from standing in that intensity with a steady heart. People often confuse resilience with coldness, but true resilience is the ability to feel fully while staying clear. When you can do this, you begin developing a rare quality called grounded stability. When others are tense, you remain steady. When situations are chaotic, you remain clear. When someone loses composure, you do not lose yourself. This is not a natural talent, but the result of practicing staying within pressure instead of running from it. You may feel your heart pounding, but you are not swept away. You may feel heat rising, but you do not explode. You may feel the body tense, but you do not collapse. When you stand firm in the strong winds of life, you become someone others instinctively turn to because you hold the stability they cannot find in themselves. That stability does not come from outward calm, but from an anchored core. Pressure is also an opportunity to see which parts of you have matured and which parts remain fragile. In a stressful meeting, you notice you no longer fear judgment as before. In a conflict, you notice you can listen without becoming defensive. In an unexpected situation, you notice you can respond instead of react. Each moment like this is a marker showing you are leaving your old version and moving closer to the version that can lead yourself. When used correctly, pressure becomes the catalyst for sharpness. Just as metal becomes strong only when placed in high heat, human resilience is forged in the moments when life does not go your way. People who lack inner strength fear pressure because they believe it will destroy them. People with inner wisdom see pressure as nature's test designed to deepen them. No one grows in comfort. All genuine growth is born from moments when you are forced to face your own intensity. Pressure also opens a door that helps you distinguish between what you can control and what you cannot. In stress, you often lose that boundary. You try to change others when what you need to change is your internal state. You try to control outcomes when what you need to hold is your response. When you focus on the correct sphere of control, pressure becomes far less overwhelming. You are no longer fighting battles you cannot win. You use all your energy on what is actually yours to hold. That is why people who master pressure appear calm, not because their life is easier, but because they do not waste energy on unwinnable battles. Pressure becomes the test that shows whether you are still pulled by your old identity or have stepped into your true essence. The old identity is fearful, defensive, and reactive. The true essence looks directly, stays sharp, and does not run. When you are in pressure and can still see yourself clearly, you are living from essence rather than ego, and that is when you become unshakable. The ability to stand firm under pressure is the sign that you have traveled far on the path of emotional mastery. Not because you no longer feel strong emotions, but because you no longer let those emotions drag you away. You use pressure as a form of mental weight training. Each time you stand firm, you lift a heavier weight, and eventually the weight that once broke you becomes the very thing that strengthens you. When you understand this, you no longer fear pressure but see it as a doorway. Because behind that doorway is the version of you who can lead yourself in every situation. And no turbulence in life can defeat someone who has learned to stand steady in the center of the storm. Transforming pain into momentum does not come from denying emotions, but from reading the message that pain carries. And I am guiding you into the deep layer where what once broke you becomes the force that helps you grow. No one walks through life without carrying wounds. Wounds come from careless words, abandonment, broken expectations, heartbreak, and unexpected failure. Most people try to escape pain as quickly as possible, but the truth is, pain does not disappear just because you turn away from it. It stays inside the body as a silent weight that makes you react more strongly in small situations. To transform it, you must look directly at the pain instead of avoiding it. Not to torment yourself, but to understand what it is pointing to. Every pain is a signal. The pain of being belittled shows you have neglected your own worth. The pain of abandonment shows you have tied your self-value to someone else's presence. The pain of betrayal shows you need to relearn how to set boundaries. The pain of failure shows you have been evaluating yourself based on outcomes instead of essence. When you see the truth that pain is revealing, you break the illusion that made you believe you were weak. Pain does not teach you fear. Pain teaches you what needs healing. And only when you understand this message can you move to the next chapter of your life. Transforming pain requires you to stay with the emotion without letting it pull you into darkness. The first thing you must do is stop running. When pain appears, you often look for distraction. You scroll your phone, you watch movies, you bury yourself in work, you chase quick pleasures, but all of these are just bandages covering a deep wound. When the bandage falls off, the pain returns even stronger. The only path is to let the emotion move through you instead of running from it. When you allow yourself to feel the pain without judgment, the body begins releasing what has been held tightly. In that moment, pain is no longer a threat, but becomes a stream of water washing away stuck memories. The second thing you must do is place the pain in the correct position. You are not your pain. You are the one experiencing the pain. When you say, "I am hurting," you merge with it. When you say there is pain moving through you, create enough distance to observe it. That distance is where clarity remains. When you do not identify with the pain, you are not controlled by it. The third step in transforming pain is finding its meaning. Not every pain has a beautiful reason, but every pain has meaning when you are awake enough to see it. Meaning does not lie in the event, but in the growth it forces you to reach. A person who was belittled learns to rebuild their self-respect. A person who was abandoned learns to support themselves. A person who failed learns to see themselves beyond success. A person who was betrayed learns to distinguish real love from the need for emotional filling. When meaning appears, pain shifts roles from burden to material for strength. The fourth step is turning pain into a new threshold. Each time you touch your emotional limits, you expand your capacity to endure. When you live through pain without letting it destroy you, the nervous system learns that you are safe even when things go wrong. This creates the ability to remain steady in similar situations. The pain that once frightened you becomes the area in which you are most confident. The pain that once broke you becomes the place where you are strongest. People with inner power are not strong because they avoided pain, but because they went into the center of pain and came out with a rewired brain. They not only heal but also gain depth, resilience, and solidity. The fifth step is using pain as a compass. Pain points to where you need change. If you hurt in a relationship, pain is pointing to something unsaid or unprotected. If you hurt at work, pain is pointing to the fact that you are living far from your true values. If you hurt because of expectations, pain is pointing to standards you are placing on yourself that do not fit who you are. When you use pain as a compass, you no longer fear emotions. You listen to them, you learn from them, you let them guide you to a more mature version of yourself. The sixth step is releasing pain from the body. Pain does not reside only in the mind, but in the body as contracted points. You may feel it in the chest, in the stomach, in the shoulders, or in the throat. When you recognize where the body is holding pain and breathe into that place, you help the body release the trapped energy. When the body releases, the mind releases. Pain is no longer a wall, but a current. It moves through you, and you emerge on the other side lighter and clearer. Finally comes the most important step. You must allow pain to become a chapter of your past, not an identity you carry. Many people spend their entire lives attaching themselves to old wounds as if they define who they are. But pain is not identity. It is only an event. Your true identity is the one who lived through it and still rose. When you see yourself as the person who overcame rather than the person who was harmed, you step into a new state. The state of someone who knows their strength was forged from the very things they once feared. Transforming pain is the journey of turning inner darkness into inner light, not by erasing pain but by walking through it. Each step you take is a step away from your old version. Each time you dare to feel is a moment you reclaim a part of yourself that was lost. And when you emerge from pain with your heart still open, you become someone who no longer fears emotions because you have met yourself in the deepest place and know that nothing can break a person who has dared to look directly into their own pain. Emotional intelligence in relationships and the art of setting boundaries does not arise from communication skills, but from the ability to see what is happening beneath the surface of every interaction. And I am guiding you into the place where most conflict does not come from words, but from wounds that have not been seen. Relationships are always the most honest mirror of one's emotional maturity. When you have not mastered your inner world, you enter relationships with defensiveness. You interpret others' behavior through the lens of old fears. You believe people are hurting you, when, in truth, they are only touching the unhealed parts within you. When you understand this, you begin to change the way you look and the way you respond. You no longer react instinctively but respond with clarity and calm. Emotional intelligence in relationships begins with the ability to recognize that everyone entering a conversation carries their own story. Someone who speaks loudly is not necessarily disrespecting you, but may have learned to defend themselves with volume. Someone who is silent is not indifferent, but may not know how to express emotions. Someone who is overly sensitive is not troublesome, but may have once been dismissed. When you see this, you stop personalizing their behavior. You no longer view every action as a statement about your worth. You begin to see the person in front of you as a human, carrying wounds just like you. And a softness arises in you, not to endure but to understand. However, understanding does not mean weakening boundaries. Emotional intelligence is not about always being kind, but knowing when to open your heart and when to protect yourself. Boundaries are not walls. Boundaries are clarity about what is and is not acceptable. People without boundaries often feel used. People who set boundaries too late often explode. People who do not express their needs often feel abandoned. All of these lead to unnecessary conflict. When you set boundaries from a calm state, you communicate to others how to treat you. Boundaries are an expression of self-respect, not rigidity. In relationships, you must learn to say what needs to be said without using your pain as a weapon. When you criticize someone from your wound, they will defend themselves. When you speak from clarity, they will listen. For example, When you feel dismissed, instead of saying "you always make me feel worthless," you can say "this situation touches an old fear in me, and I need respect when we talk." When others hear this, they receive the message without feeling attacked. This helps them cooperate instead of resisting you. Emotional intelligence is also the ability to not react immediately. In conflict, people often say things they do not truly mean. They are simply trying to protect themselves. If you react in that moment, the conflict escalates. But if you pause and listen, you will realize that what they say is not what they are trying to convey. Behind criticism may be an unspoken apology. Behind silence may be pain trying to hide. Behind anger may be the fear of being abandoned. When you see the deeper layer, you stop fighting the surface. You speak directly to what is being activated. This softens the relationship and creates real intimacy. A large part of emotional intelligence is learning not to carry emotions that are not yours. When someone is angry, they carry a whole day of tension. When someone is cold, they carry years of wounds. When someone criticizes, they carry their own self-doubt. Their reactions say more about them than about you. When you understand this, you no longer let others' emotions become a verdict against your worth. You stay centered, and from that center, you respond with clarity. The art of boundary setting also requires understanding that you are not responsible for healing others. You can accompany them but cannot live for them. You can listen but cannot carry their emotions. You can love but cannot lose yourself. Many people mistakenly believe sacrifice is love, but sacrifice without boundaries leads only to exhaustion and resentment. Mature love is not fusion but presence. You stand beside someone not to fill their emptiness but to grow together. When you set boundaries, you create space for both people to breathe. When others know your limits, they no longer unconsciously violate them. When you know your limits, you no longer let yourself be pulled into their emotional storms. This is the point of balance where relationships become strong because both people are standing firmly. Emotional intelligence in relationships is not making everything pleasant but facing the truth with peace. Sometimes you must say what others do not want to hear. Sometimes you must step away to protect your inner stability. Sometimes you must let others take responsibility for their own behavior. This does not make you love less. It makes you love correctly. In a healthy relationship, both individuals are invited to become better versions of themselves. And this only happens when there are clarity and respect. When you develop emotional intelligence, you become someone others feel safe around. Not because you always agree, but because you are always honest. Not because you are always gentle, but because you are always clear. Not because you never feel anger, but because you know how to express what you feel without hurting. This is the kind of presence that brings depth to a relationship. The art of boundary setting is also the art of preserving respect for both people. Without boundaries, you lose yourself. With boundaries too rigid, you lose others. With the right boundaries, you keep both. And when you enter relationships with the energy of someone who knows their worth and respects the worth of others, you create a space where love is not a battle, but a shared journey of growth. Emotional intelligence in relationships is the ability to stand firm even when others are not. The ability to love without losing yourself. The ability to speak truth without breaking others. The ability to hold boundaries without closing your heart. When you develop this capacity, you enter every relationship as a stable source of light. Not to save anyone, but to remind both of you that where there is clarity and peace, connection becomes truly enduring. Inner dialogue and the journey of rewriting the self at the root level is the deepest shift in the entire process of emotional mastery. And I am guiding you into the place where the quiet voice inside determines how you love yourself, how you respond to the world, and how you rebuild who you are. Every reaction, every fear, every defense begins from the sentences you do not hear out loud, but that shape your entire experience of life. Some voices have been inside you since very early on. The voice from the day you were compared tells you that you will never be enough. The voice from the day you were abandoned tells you that no one truly stays with you. The voice from the day you were dismissed tells you that your worth is fragile and can be taken away at any moment. You grow up carrying these voices, and when you reach adulthood, you mistake them for the voice of reason, but in truth they are only recordings from years when you did not yet know how to protect yourself. Inner dialogue is the emotional loop operating silently. When you make a mistake, that voice says you failed. When you are rejected, that voice says you are unworthy. When you do not achieve results immediately, that voice says you are incapable. You think you are evaluating events, but you are only repeating an old voice. To rewrite the self, you must begin here, not by erasing the old voice, but by looking directly at it and asking whether it still fits the person you are becoming. Inner dialogue has three forms. The first is the judging voice. This is the harshest voice, always looking at you through impossible standards. It recalls every mistake, every failure, every moment you were imperfect. It is not trying to make you better. It is trying to make you believe you are undeserving. The second is the fearful voice. This voice appears whenever you want to expand your life. It reminds you of the times you were hurt to stop you from trying again. It thinks it is protecting you, but in truth, it is keeping you at the smallest version of yourself. The third is the defeated voice. This voice appears when you are exhausted. It tells you that every effort is meaningless, that you were born this way, that you cannot change. This is the voice that keeps people trapped in cycles without ever stepping out. You cannot eliminate these three voices entirely, but you can change your relationship with them. Instead of letting them speak and believing them immediately, you begin observing them as if observing someone speaking from their own pain. When a self-critical thought appears, you ask where it comes from. When a fear arises, you ask what it is trying to serve. When a thought of surrender appears, you ask what it is avoiding. The question is not how to make the voice disappear, but how to stop identifying with it. When you see the truth that the inner voice is only a remnant of the past, you no longer let it determine your future. Rewriting the self is not creating a falsely positive version. Rewriting the self is reprogramming the inner voice so that it becomes an ally instead of a saboteur. When you make a mistake, the new voice will say, "This is information for adjustment," instead of punishment. When you are rejected, the new voice will say, "Rejection does not define your worth, but simply the lack of alignment." When you fail, the new voice will say, "Failure is only a chapter, not the whole book." These are not empty affirmations, but the way you train the brain to rewrite neural pathways. Each time you speak to yourself with calm and clarity, you strengthen the new version. Each time you correct the judging voice, you reduce its power. Each time you stay steady before the fearful voice, you prove that fear is not truth. This mechanism rests on an important principle. The brain believes what you repeat. If you repeat the negative, the brain treats it as truth. If you repeat the powerful, the brain rebuilds its emotional architecture accordingly. Rewriting the self also requires facing the core belief. Each person carries a hidden belief about themselves, such as, "I am unlovable, I am not good enough, I am not safe when I show emotion, I must be perfect to be accepted." These beliefs control you from the shadows. When you change your behavior without changing the belief, you quickly fall back into old cycles. Behavior is the branches. Belief is the root. You must work at the root level. Ask yourself one crucial question. What do I truly believe about myself? If the answer hurts, you have found the root. The next work is to replace that belief with one that aligns with the version you are building. For example, if you believe you are unworthy, you do not need to shift to an unrealistic belief that you are flawless. You only need to shift to the belief that you have value even when you are not perfect. As the new belief takes root, you will see your emotional reactions change. You no longer fear every comment. You no longer feel compelled to please everyone. You no longer judge yourself when things are not perfect. You begin living from essence instead of from wounds. Inner dialogue is the foundation of all change. You cannot have inner peace when inside you is a battlefield of self-attacking voices. You cannot have healthy relationships when the voice inside you believes no one can truly love you. You cannot lead your life when the strongest voice inside you is the voice of surrender. When you rewrite your inner dialogue, you rewrite your entire life. And the most important thing is that you must become your own inner coach. Not your critic, not your appeaser, but your guide. The one who speaks truth, protects what is right, stays when you are weak, pushes when you hesitate. When you hear that voice, you know you have entered a new chapter. A chapter where the self is no longer built from fear but from awareness. A chapter where you are no longer defined by the past but by choice. And when you rewrite the self from the root, you step into the realm where humans no longer live just to react, but to lead themselves with clarity and peace that no one can take away. The soul layer and the power of silent presence is where the journey of emotional mastery moves beyond techniques and enters the deepest realm of the human being, where you no longer merely adjust reactions, but begin to see your true nature. I am guiding you into this realm, where it is no longer a battle between thoughts and emotions, but a return to the still point at the center, where you realize you were never broken no matter how many waves life has thrown at you. There is a truth most people never recognize. You are not your emotions. You are not your thoughts. You are not the story you were told since childhood. All of those are only waves passing across the surface of an ocean that is wider, deeper, and more still. That ocean is the soul layer within you, the part that never disappears, never gets wounded, and is never bent by circumstances. You have touched this layer before. In moments of peace without reason, in the minutes you looked at the night sky and felt small but calm, in the times you went through pain you thought you could never bear but then discovered there was still a very deep part of you that remained unbroken. The soul layer does not speak through words. It speaks through silence. And when you learn to listen to that silence, everything in your life begins to shift. Silent presence is the ability to stand in the midst of life's constant motion without being toppled by any wind. Not because you do not feel, but because you feel without losing your center. When someone says something hurtful, silent presence allows you to see the pain, but also the part within you that is untouched. When someone is disappointed in you, silent presence allows you to see the sting, but also the part of you that remains whole. When life turns unexpectedly, silent presence allows you to see the unease, but also the deepest ground within you that does not move. What exhausts most people is not life's waves, but their identification with every wave. An emotion rises and they think they are the anger. A negative thought appears and they think they are the thought. A worry runs through and they think they are the worry. But when you see that beneath all movement there is a layer that does not move, you stop being pulled away. You become the observer rather than the one drowning. The soul layer is where you stop fighting the current and begin flowing with it. You no longer try to control everything but choose to be fully present in each moment. You no longer ask why everything happens to you, but how you can grow from what is happening. When you live from this layer, your peace no longer depends on how someone treats you. It no longer depends on the results you achieve. It no longer depends on praise or criticism. Peace comes from within you, from your ability to see yourself clearly without judgment. Silent presence is also where your intuition becomes sharp. When the mind is no longer dragged by emotional noise, you begin to hear the soft but true voice inside. The voice that tells you to leave a relationship that is not right. The voice that tells you to pause before you burn out. The voice that tells you to take a step forward even when you are afraid. This voice does not push, does not force, does not shout. It speaks with a certainty you feel in your deepest part. And remarkably, this voice is always right. When you live far from the soul layer, you make decisions from fear or momentary desire. But when you live close to the soul layer, you make decisions from clarity. Not the clarity of logic, but the clarity of essence. A clarity that needs no justification and no explanation. When you enter the soul layer, you also begin to understand that most pain in life is not meant to punish you, but to unlock a level of growth you have never reached. Some pains pull you under, but then reveal a depth in you that you did not know you had. Some losses break your heart, but expand it. Some failures knock you to the ground, but set you on the right path. The soul layer does not look at life through winning or losing. It looks at life through learning and growing. Therefore, when you access this layer, you no longer grow bitter when difficulty arrives. You no longer collapse when someone leaves. You no longer see pain as the end. You see it as transition. You understand that every experience draws you closer to your true self. Silent presence is not passivity. It is the deepest form of agency. When you stand firm from the inner center, you respond to life with wisdom instead of instinct. You know when to act and when to release, when to speak and when to be silent, when to hold on and when to walk away. You become like a still lake. The surface may ripple, but the bottom never shakes. People look at you and feel safe because you do not carry chaotic energy. You do not take their emotions as your own. You do not let their instability pull you from your center. You keep your light, and that light steadies the space around you. The soul layer is where you realize that your essence does not need to be proven. It only needs to be lived through awareness, lived through authenticity, lived through unconditional presence. When you enter this layer, you no longer chase worth, you become worth. A worth that does not come from achievements or reputation, but from the quality of presence you bring into the world. And when you live from that deepest place, you step into a kind of power that is not loud, not showy, not trying to prove anything, but everyone can feel it. A power that makes others quiet. As you continue this journey, you will realize that the soul layer is not a destination, but the foundation of every step. The place you stand when the waves rise, the place you find direction when darkness surrounds you, the place you return to when the world becomes too noisy, and the place you see the truth that everything you have been seeking outside has been within you all along. You only needed to be quiet enough to hear it. The 30-day integration plan for living in a new state is not a rigid discipline schedule, but a bridge that moves you from understanding to embodiment. And I am guiding you through this journey the way a person leaves their old identity to step into their new timeline. No one changes just by understanding. Humans change when they live differently. And these 30 days are designed to bring what you have learned into every rhythm of daily life, until your nervous system no longer returns to the old version of you. Each week is a layer of transformation. Each day is a small imprint. And when the 30 days end, you will stand at a point where you cannot return to who you were because your inner structure has shifted. The first week is the week of awareness and pause. This is the foundation of the entire journey. In these 7 days, your task is not to change your reactions immediately, but simply to see the trigger point. Every time an emotion rises, you only need to pause for one moment and say there is a reaction appearing. Just this single sentence is enough to insert awareness between stimulus and response. You begin seeing what you have never seen before. You see the tightness in your chest in the moment someone does not answer. You see your heartbeat rise when being judged. You see heat rising when you are misunderstood. These 7 days are like turning on a light in a dark room, and only when there is light can you know what needs to be rearranged. The second week is the week of reframing perception. When you have become accustomed to noticing your reactions, you begin questioning the story inside. In these 7 days, you do not allow yourself to believe the first thought. You ask whether it is true. You ask whether there is another interpretation. You ask whether this reaction belongs to the present or to an old memory. You view every event as data instead of definition. When someone says something harsh, you do not assign personal meaning but place it into context. When someone is silent, you do not assume they dismiss you but consider the possibility that they are busy. When you make a mistake, you do not use it as a weapon against your self-worth but as information to adjust. This week, you are changing the layer of meaning, and when meaning changes, emotions change. The third week is the week of emotional alchemy. This is the most challenging phase because you must stay with emotions instead of running from them. In these 7 days, you choose the strongest emotion that appears each day and spend a few minutes being with it. If it is anger, you feel the heat in your body without acting on it. If it is anxiety, you feel the fast heartbeat without letting it drag you into negative stories. If it is sadness, you let your body feel its weight without letting your mind add more pain. Each day you do this, you are expanding your emotional capacity. You are teaching your nervous system that emotional intensity is not a threat. These 7 days are like forging steel in fire. Each time you stay a little longer, you add another layer of solidity to your being. The 4th week is the week of aligned action. This is when you bring everything into real life. In these 7 days, you choose 2 specific situations where you often lose yourself and use them as practice. For example, if you often react strongly when a loved one speaks harshly, you will pause, reframe, and respond from calm. If you often lose your composure under pressure, you will use breath as an anchor before deciding. If you often shrink when criticized, you will stand upright and reply with a steady voice. Each time you behave differently, you strengthen the new neural pathways. You give your brain evidence that you have changed. And the key is consistency. No need for perfection, only repetition. After 7 days, you will see yourself behaving differently in situations that once caused you to lose yourself. These 30 days are not designed to turn you into someone without emotions, but into someone who is not swept away by them. Not to become someone without mistakes, but someone not broken by mistakes. Not to become someone hard, but someone steady. This plan operates on 3 principles of inner strength. The first principle is that repetition creates identity. You cannot simply understand, you must live. When you repeat new behaviors, the brain rewrites. When you repeat new perspectives, memory changes meaning. Each day is a brick building the new self. The second principle is that small changes create big shifts. You do not need to change 100% in one day. You only need to change 1% each day. 1% in breath, 1% in perception, 1% in response. That 1% over 30 days creates a difference you cannot deny. The third principle is that the body changes before the mind. When you pause, breathe deeply. Relax your shoulders, open your chest, and face the situation. Your body signals to the nervous system that you are safe. And when the body feels safe, the mind no longer reacts the same way. These 30 days are not just a plan, but a restructuring. You are building a baseline of peace, weakening old reaction pathways, expanding emotional endurance, and shifting from ego to essence. After 30 days, you will notice things. Situations that once made you explode now only tighten you slightly. Situations that once made you anxious now become practice. Situations that once hurt you now appear as signals. People who once destabilized you no longer hold such power. And most importantly, you see yourself differently, not because the world has changed, but because you have stepped out of the old version of you. This plan is the intersection between understanding and living, between learning and embodiment, between theory and reality. When you finish these 30 days, you no longer ask how to be at peace. You become peace, because you have practiced every breath, every observation, every choice, every response, to bring yourself into a state where peace is not an effort, but an awakened essence. This is the doorway into the final part of the journey, where you step into the new timeline you have been preparing for through these 30 days of transformation. Returning to the peaceful self and stepping into your new timeline is not an explosive moment, but a quiet shift that happens through the small choices you have practiced throughout this entire journey. And I am guiding you to the point of completion where you look back on the path you have walked and realize that the version of you standing here is no longer the person who began. You have moved through unconscious reactions to see the mechanism behind emotion. You have looked into the core wound to understand that pain is not a sentence, but an invitation to heal. You have stepped into the map of awareness to see the path. You have learned to pause, observe, reframe, stay present under pressure, turn pain into propulsion, alchemize emotion, and rebuild the baseline of peace. You have learned to speak to yourself with softness yet firmness. You have touched the soul layer, where stillness is no longer something you seek but something you carry. None of this is theory you heard. It is experience that has begun embedding itself into your nervous system. And right now, you are standing at the threshold of a new timeline where the old identity has no space left to pull you back. Your old version was used to reacting, used to running, used to seeking validation, used to shrinking or exploding whenever emotions grew too strong. That version is not bad. It is simply time for it to rest. It was shaped for survival, but you were not born to survive. You were born to lead yourself. When you step into your new timeline, you step not with force but with clarity. You no longer ask, "Am I strong enough?" but ask, "What within me is ready to be lived?" You do not try to become someone else but begin removing the layers that once hid who you truly are. The new timeline does not appear through external change but through the way you show up. When others become angry, you no longer get pulled into the storm. When someone hurts you, you see the pain but do not lose your worth. When instability arises, you no longer panic but find the pause between emotion and action. When life does not go your way, you do not collapse but become still to hear what is being invited within you. Peace is no longer something you chase. It is the ground you walk on. Strength is no longer something you must prove. It is the natural breath in every choice. When you step into the new timeline, you begin behaving as the person you are becoming instead of the person you were. You speak with a calmness you did not have before. You hold boundaries with a clarity you once feared. You open your heart with a depth you once avoided. You face pain not to conquer it but to understand yourself more. You step into the world not to defend yourself but to connect. You no longer fear intense emotions because you have learned to stand with them without being destroyed. This is the moment you realize the greatest truth of the journey. You were not healed by the chapters you listened to. You were healed by daring to look into yourself. You did not become strong through the concepts you understood. You became strong through the choices you made moment by moment. And you did not step into a new timeline because the world changed. You stepped because you changed. You have built an inner foundation no one can break. You have found the still point no circumstance can take away. You have met your essence in its deepest place, and once you have met it, you cannot lose it again. From this moment, you walk into life with the presence of someone who has come home to themselves. You no longer ask what the future will bring. You ask what you will bring into the future. This is the peaceful self you have spent the entire journey remembering. And when you live from that place, you no longer merely exist. You begin truly living. You have reached the end of the journey. And if you are sitting here in this moment, it means a very deep part of you has begun to awaken. What you have just heard is not merely a story. It is a map that guides you out of the loop of unconscious reactions, heals the core wounds, opens the peaceful self, and leads you into your own new timeline. You have seen the reason emotions once controlled you. You have seen the path of reframing perception, alchemizing emotional energy, standing firm under pressure, turning pain into momentum, and rebuilding powerful presence from within. And most importantly, you have touched the layer of stillness, where your soul has never been wounded. If these truths resonate with you, remember that the journey does not end here. It begins the moment you step out of this video and live differently. Just one small shift each day. Thank you for listening with your whole heart. If you found value in this content, please like, share, and subscribe so you do not miss the next journeys. Your presence and support are the inspiration that allows me to continue creating stories that touch the inner world and help you become the strongest version of yourself. I will see you in the next video.